Let's start from the bottom of the base.
When you say bottom, Rev, I think it'd be a bit more specific.
Two dots.
They were
20
talking
B.
about
Okay, perfect.
having merit.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about the power. It's interesting. Now we're getting back to a couple of blot here. It'll be a little bit difficult.
Oh no.
Rest of the stuff is not. So this is an interesting daf, not the easiest one though. Okay. So we learned about Sotah, and one of the things of Sotah is that if she has a schus, she has a merit, she might not die right away. According to the opinions that say schus Torah b'mayim amarim, that a merit will prolong the woman's life until she dies. Okay, so in Chafam Beis, probably about 10 to 12 lines from the bottom of the page. And the Mishnah says so that a schus, a merit, will prolong her life, even if she's guilty of the crime. Mani Masnisin, who is the Mishnah like? Now, our Mishnah says it could be a year, 2 years, or 3 years. That's the length of time her life could be prolonged. Mani Masnisin, who is our Mishnah like? Okay, now just point out that what happens if she is not guilty of the crime? So the Torah says, "V'niksav in Israel zera." If she's pure, she will have a child. Now, the fact that there's an extra verse, there's an extra terminology in morning. It seems the Gemara seems to imply that if a schus actually works, in other words, if a merit will prolong her life, that length of life, according to what the opinions we'll see, has something to do with the gestation of a child. So either it will be 3 months, meaning because that's the amount of time it would take for a child for a woman to be recognized as pregnant, or 9 months, the full gestational period, the full pregnancy. Or there's another opinion that has nothing to do with pregnancy. So the Gemara asks as follows: My name is, who is the Mishnah like? The Mishnah that says 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. It's not Abi Yosef ben Chanan. We'll see his opinion in a moment. That says 3 months. But Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak. It's not Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak that says 9 months. Ish Kfar Daram, the person from the south. But Rabbi Shmuel, and not Rabbi Shmuel who says a year. The Tanya we learn. Yesh l'schus toila shlosh chadashim k'dei hakarat ha'ober. If she has a merit, the merit will prolong her life 3 months, the length of time it takes for a pregnancy to be recognized. Divrei Abi Yosef ben Chanan, that's the opinion of Abi Yosef ben Chanan, clearly not like the Mishnah. Yeah. Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak ish kfar daram Amar tes chadashim. Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak says it's the full pregnancy. Shenemar v'niksav in Israel zera. The Torah says v'niksa shall be pure in Israel zera. The explanation here is v'niksa could even mean a scenario where she isn't pure. In other words, it could be that she'll be saved because of some merit, and the length of time she'll be saved would be the amount of time it takes to give birth to a child. Now, even though a woman's pregnancy is only recognized approximately 3 months after a woman conceives, however, according to the second opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak, it has to be an actual child. In another verse, it talks about zera. Zera means a child. It could also mean a fetus or a pregnancy. Zera ya'avdenu yusupar. Your children will speak your praises. Zera haroy l'saper. It has to be a descendant that's able to talk, meaning someone who's a live born child, not just a theoretical child, a fetus that may be born or may not be born. So therefore, it's a full 9 months. Rabbi Shmuel says, 12 months. Even though there's no proof to this, there's a hint. Okay, so what's going on here? Nebuchadnezzar got punished for destroying the first temple. Nebuchadnezzar, that's a general. He was sent to destroy the first temple, and he successfully destroyed it. He was punished. He had to live amongst the animals. Anyway, so Daniel gives him the prophecy that this is going to be his punishment. However, he also gives him some advice. What's the advice? Lehen malka yishaper alecha. Here's some advice for you. If you want a good idea, you can redeem your sin, your chet, with tzedakah, with charity. And your sins b'mechan inyan, through chaninas aniyim, through benefiting the poor people. In And this will delay the punishment that you'll be sent into the wild to live amongst the animals.
Rabbi, is this advice specifically directed at Nebuchadnezzar or?
Correct,
So
absolutely.
what did Nebuchadnezzar do in response to this advice?
We'll get to it. So he says to him, if you support the poor Jews with charity, this will extend it will prolong your time amongst people before you get sent into the wild and have to live amongst animals. In the verse states, everything came to Nebuchadnezzar, meaning that indeed he was punished by being sent to live in the forest. It took 12 months until that penalty was executed, meaning that evidently Nebuchadnezzar did listen. He gathered together the poor Jews, he fed them, and he pushed off his punishment for 12 months. Okay, so you see here, Rabbi Shmuel says 12 months. So the problem is, who's the Mishnah like? Our Mishnah says maximum of 3 years. We're in Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, and we are on the third line. So the Gemara says, L'olam Rabbi Shmuel. Indeed, we're with the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, the truth is we're going with the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, but we find that you can get 3 times the length of punishment, the length of delay. Meaning, if you can, whatever amount of time you can delay the punishment, that can be tripled. So you can take Rabbi Shmuel's opinion and triple it, and that's where you get the 3 years from. The verse states, Kayam Hashem al shloisha pishay Adam, on the 3 sins of Edom. 1 second. Hold on. Yeah, where we find so in this verse specifically, we see here that God punishes for 3 sins, but because the punishment did not happen immediately, it was deferred. So therefore, we understand from here that it could also be the deferral could also happen 3 times. You can get 3 units of deferral. So if the unit of deferral is a month, is a year, you can get 3 of those units, and that's 3 years. Okay, now Rabbi Shmuel says that the story of Nebuchadnezzar is not a proof for how long you can delay the punishment. In other words, Rabbi Shmuel said, it's 12 months. How do I know? I don't know. I don't have any proof. But I have a hint. What's the hint? The hint is from what happened with Daniel. Daniel's advice to Nebuchadnezzar. So the Gemara says it seems to be a pretty good proof. You see that somebody was supposed to be punished, and his punishment was deferred for 12 months. So the Gemara concludes, why is it not considered a solid proof? Why do you consider it just a hint as opposed to a full proof? So the Gemara says, in general, God delays punishment for non-Jews more than Jews. Jews get punished faster than non-Jews. And therefore, maybe that's why Nebuchadnezzar was able to push off his penalty for a year. Whereas a Jew perhaps would not be able to defer his punishment for a year, which could be 3 years. Okay, very interesting Gemara here. She might have a merit, and that merit will defer her punishment for up to 3 years. Exactly what type of merit are we talking about? So the Gemara here will discuss 2 types of merits. It can be a merit of good deeds. She's done, she's engaged in worthy behavior, or the schus of Torah, of studying Torah. So the Gemara asks, what's the schus here? What's the merit? Ilem is schus to Torah. If we're talking about the merit of Torah, a woman is not commanded to study Torah, and therefore that merit isn't very great. And the Gemara presumes it would not be sufficient for her to defer her death sentence. Elas chus the mitzvah. It must be the merit of a mitzvah. So the Gemara says, chus the mitzvah mi migna kulahai. Does the merit of a mitzvah protect that much? Okay, what does this mean? Meaning that at some point in her life, she's done a mitzvah. 3 years ago, there was an old person, somebody needed help, and she worked really hard and she helped them out. Plenty of mitzvahs of acts of kindness a woman or a man could do. Is that going to protect her now a bunch of years later, or maybe the next day even, to delay the consequence of her actions? Vatanya, we learned. Ezudarash Rabbi Menachem Bar Yosi. Rabbi Menachem Bar Yosi taught as follows: Kiner mitzvah, because a ner, a candle, is a mitzvah. The Torah and Torah study is or, it's light. Tola es hakosav es mitzvah bener. The Torah compares mitzvah, good deeds, to ner, to a candle. But es Torah ba'or, and Torah study to light. It's a mitzvah bener, lo melacha, comparison of a mitzvah to a candle. Lo melacha ma ner eina megina el lefisha. Just like a candle protects you only for a short period of time, as long as it's burning, basically. Av mitzvah eina megina el lefisha. A mitzvah protects one. Okay, we'll use two words here. We'll talk about protection, that is megan, and then we'll talk about matzel, saving. Matzel means to be saved from Yetzer Hara, from an evil inclination. Megan, to protect, that means to protect from, negative consequences, what we call piranhas, difficulties, tragedies. So a mitzvah protects short term. And Torah is compared to light, just like light. Light is sort of a permanent feature of existence. After the Torah study also it protects forever. The verse states, "This is a verse we say with every siyam. Along your ways, it guides you. The Torah guides you on your ways. In your ways, it guides you. That's this world. When you sleep, tishmar alacha, it will protect you. Zumisa. This is death. In other words, the Torah protects at a moment of death. And its conclusion, and at its conclusion, the ketz, the end, it will be your words. What does that mean? It means the Torah will protect la'asad lavai for the world to come. The Gemara explains here. Okay, Rashi's version of the Gemara is maybe slightly different than you might think, but we'll go through it carefully here. Mashal Adam, you have a person, mahalach be'ishan laila. He's traveling on a dark road at night, and there's absolutely no light. And va'afela, it's a thick darkness. There's no moon, He's afraid of the thorns. From pits, these are other things that might scratch him. From wild animals that might kill him. Minalistim, robbers, highwaymen. And here's another problem. He doesn't even know which road he's on. So he has a problem. So what's he going to do? He gets a torch. So all of a sudden, it's very helpful. Why? He could see his way. So now all of a sudden, he won't stumble into a pothole or walk into a tree. But he's still afraid, though, of wild animals or highwaymen. If anything, he's more of a target for highwaymen. And he still doesn't know which road he's on. Okay, this first torch that's given to him, this is considered a mitzvah. The torch is burning. All of a sudden, he's sort of protected from his surroundings. Now he gets Torah. Once the sun comes up, so now everything is lit. He knows where everything is going. Everyone can see each other. He's saved from robbers and from wild animals. Daytime, these animals are typically nocturnal animals. The highwaymen are looking to get away before anyone sees them. So once it's daytime, people can see them, and they're much more hesitant to attack. This would be the equivalent of Torah. So Torah's protection is much wider. He doesn't know which road he's on. The moment he gets to the intersection and he sees the signs, so now he knows exactly where he's going. What's that considered to be? That's death. Death is sort of the separation of the roads, and he knows if he's on the right road or if he's on the wrong roads. In other words, the idea sort of is that until a person dies, he doesn't really know what's going to happen in his future. if he decides to turn, the Talmud relates there were many scholars that at the end of their days, not many, but there were a number of scholars that at the end of their days they turned around and they, took the wrong pathway. And this is certainly a risk factor. One never knows which road he'll end up being. Once he dies, he can no longer change his ways. So that sort of ends all of his difficulties. Davar achar, another possibility. Okay. So this verse is sort of an explanation to that pasuk. Davar achar, another possibility. Avera mechaba mitzvah. A sin can extinguish a mitzvah. So a mitzvah is a candle, right? Pour some water over it, it goes out. Ve'en avera mechaba Torah. But a sin cannot extinguish Torah. Shenemar mayim rabim. Many waters la yuchlu lichbais es ha'ava. They won't be able to extinguish the love. And that's a reference to Torah. Even sin will not extinguish the benefit of Torah. Okay. 1 second. Okay, therefore, again, we see here that if the woman, what exactly is, getting back to the original question, what exactly is the woman's merit? If it's the merit of mitzvah, first of all, the merit of mitzvah isn't as strong as Torah. And also, avera mechava mitzvah. A sin can push away the benefits of a mitzvah. So therefore, that it should be the case that a woman who sinned with another man that wasn't her husband, that sin should push away the benefits of any kind deed she's done. Okay, it's Amr Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef proposes as follows: mitzvah, a positive mitzvah, a good deed, the moment that he engages in the good deed, migna umatzla, it protects him and it saves him. When he's not engaged in the mitzvah, so then agune migna atzuli mitzvah, it protects him, but it doesn't save him. Okay, what does it mean? It protects him. It protects him from tragedy, or her from tragedy. And in this case, Rabbi Yosef is proposing that if she did a good deed, then that good deed will protect her from tragedy, even if she's not doing the good deed right now. However, a good deed, while you're engaging in the good deed, it saves a person from Yetzer Hara as well, from an evil inclination to sin. Torah, Torah, whether one is engaged at that moment in the act of Torah, or whether he has learned in the past, it both protects him from tragedy, and it saves him from the evil inclination, from sin. Maskav l'Rabba, so Rabba asks if that's the case, Elamayata, if that's the case, Doeg v'Achitophel. These were two great scholars. Doeg and Achitophel. Mila asked to be Torah, and Mila higina alayu. Doeg and Achitophel both rebelled against David HaMelech. So David HaMelech, King David, was running away from Shaul, and he at some point was about to die from hunger, and he ended up eating the showbreads from the Beis Hamikdash. At that point, it was the Mishkan. It was in Noiv, in Shiloh, and Doeg basically tattled on David to Shaul, who ended up killing out the community of Kohanim of Noiv. Now it seems that Doeg at some point Avshalom was a similar story. Achitophel was a similar story. He was an advisor to David. He joined Achitophel. He had a plan to surprise attack David in the middle of the night. David had put in a spy, I can't remember his name offhand, who convinced Avshalom not to go through with the attack. And ultimately Avshalom did not. He attacked in broad daylight and he was killed. He was wiped out. Now Achitophel was a brilliant man, great Torah scholar. And he recognized that if he attacks by day, he's bound to lose the attack. So he ran home and he committed suicide. That is the story of Achitophel's demise.
He came up earlier, Achitophel.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he came out. Yeah.
He went in the Tanakh and read the story there.
Yeah. So he stretched out a sword and fell over it and killed himself. Okay. So Doeg and Achitophel, again, these are great scholars, and yet obviously they succumb to both sin and tragedy. So how, if Torah would protect them, then how could it be that these great scholars would fall? So the Gemara says, hold on. Mila asked the Torah, why did the Torah not protect them? So the Gemara says, the Gemara basically says that Rav Yosef's statement was incorrect, and the Gemara redefines the parameters of Rav Yosef in such a way that it would not answer our question of the Gemara. We're back to the original question, which would be, what exactly is the merit of a Sotah? What merit might she have that would extend, that would defer her punishment? Ela Amar Rava says, Torah, when a person is studying Torah, when he's studying it, it protects him from tragedy and it saves him. When he's not studying Torah, it protects him from tragedy. But it does not save him from sin. And therefore, Doeg and Achitophel were susceptible to the temptation of sin. And obviously, Doeg and Achitophel are just extreme examples, but obviously there are many people that study Torah and sin. And Torah would not protect you from sin when you're not studying Torah. A mitzvah protects one from tragedy, whether he's engaged in the mitzvah or whether he's not engaged in the mitzvah. But it does not save him from sin. Okay. According to this version of Rava, according to this version of Rava, it is Rava. So the explanation of Sotah could be that if she's done a mitzvah, then it's true that she would be able to sin, and she would be punished for those sins. But it could be that the mitzvah would protect her from the consequence, tragic consequence. Ravina proposes, we're talking about a woman who has the merit of Torah study. So you'll say to me that she's not commanded. So Gemara says, it's true, she's not commanded to study Torah, but she does have the benefit of the people who are commanded that she supports, namely her husband and her sons. The Agra for the reward, the Mikran Umasnayin Benayu, they provide Torah study and support for their children to study Torah. They wait for their husbands to return from the study hall. This does not mean in the evening. This means sort of after a week or a month. So this is something where they would go away to study. So effectively, they're giving up their time with their husband, which we'll soon see is very valuable to women, hopefully in a few minutes. Because they're giving up basically their husband's time by allowing them to go learn. So therefore, they reap reward, and this is reward of somebody who's commanded to study Torah, namely their husband. Miloi palgan bahadayu, don't they split the reward with their husband, and that reward is enough to defer the punishment, the penalty of being a Sotah. My precious Rachim, what's the intersection? So previously I interpreted this as the day of death, which is the Gemara's first opinion. Amar Chizda zet Talmud Chacham v'yein Misa. This is a Torah scholar on the day that he dies, which means he can no longer turn around. There's no risk that he might succumb to go on the wrong pathway. There are other explanations. This is a Torah scholar who has a combination of fear of sin. If he's fearful of sin and he studies Torah, there is a very minute risk, that much smaller risk, that he'll end up on the wrong path. Mar Zutra says, the precious Racham sort of means a definitive conclusion. The Torah scholars often, they provide multiple alternatives, and the final halachic explanation, that means the final conclusion that's to be relied upon practically, that's Talmud Chacham who's concluded his scholarship. His scholarship has given him definitive conclusions, and therefore that's also a merit for a scholar. Davar Acham, another possibility: avera mechaba mitzvah ve'ena avera mechaba Torah. A sin can extinguish a mitzvah, but it cannot extinguish a Torah. It cannot extinguish Torah knowledge. In other words, the merit of Torah. Amar Rav Yosef says, Darshay, hold on. Darshay Rabbi Nachman bar Yossi lahai krot Sinai. Rabbi Nachman bar Yossi explained this verse like it was taught on Sinai. The Mola darshu doiga achitoifel haki leirodfu basar David. If Doeg and Achitophel did not understand the sin the same way, they would not have pursued David. The siv lamer alikim osvu. Oh, no, it's okay, no, it's- Okay, the Gemara says if Doeg and Achitophel explain the verse in this way, they would not have ended up pursuing David. Okay, what does this mean? So Doeg and Achitophel both. The problem here in the story is that obviously, as you can figure out, Doeg tattled on the city of Nov well before King David was king. This was when Shaul HaMelech was still the king. Achitophel happened after the story of Bathsheba. So this is where Achitophel basically said to himself that David HaMelech does not have any merit left because he sinned with Bathsheba. So had Doeg understood this verse, he would not have said So Achitophel thought that David was vulnerable, and that's why he joined Avshalom, because David had sinned with Bathsheba.
But didn't Avshalom steal the hearts of everybody?
True. So we're not talking about Avshalom. We're talking about, I'm sorry, I probably said Avshalom instead of Achitophel. In other words, had Achitophel recognized that the sin of David, Achitophel thought that because David had sinned, he was vulnerable, and therefore he joined Avshalom with the goal of pursuing David.
He wasn't won over by Avshalom. He was.
It seems according to the Gemara that he wasn't persuaded easily. He thought he was power hungry.
Strategic, tactical.
Correct. Okay, and so Achitophel basically said, God has abandoned David because David had sinned with Bathsheba. Now, what about Doeg? Doeg happened well before the story of Bathsheba. I don't know. That's what I was looking at the article. I don't understand.
It said it should be deleted. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, they did pull it out?
No, it said he wasn't alive at the time of David.
Oh, there we go. Okay, they deleted it. Okay, perfect. That makes more
Delete
sense.
that,
My Darish. What did they say? God will not remain among you if he sees sexual immorality, and that's what they perceived was the sin of David HaMelech. They didn't recognize that a sin will indeed God will turn away from somebody who has merit but does have the sin of immorality, whereas God will not necessarily turn away. It isn't necessarily the case that it will cause him to turn around if a person has the merit of Torah. Okay, before we spoke about how a sin will not extinguish the merit of Torah study because many waters will not be able to extinguish the love. The conclusion of that verse is, if a man will give a tremendous amount of his wealth in pursuit of love, will he not be embarrassed? What does that mean? But my boys Yevuzulai will not be embarrassing for man to give away half his fortune in pursuit of love. Amar Ula explains this. So love in this verse means Torah. What exactly does this mean? Like a Shimon Achi ben Achi Azariah, not like the story of Shimon, but like Rabbi Yochanan ben Asiyah, and not like Rabbi Yochanan. Like a Hil b'Shivna. It's a reference to Hil and Shivna. So first we'll explain Hil b'Shivna, then we'll go back to the other scenario. The Chiyasa of Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, he taught as follows: Amar Hil b'Shivna Achi Hava. Hil and Shivna were both brothers. Hil asik b'Torah. Hil studied Torah. If anyone remembers the story, Hil studied Torah from out of extreme poverty. He was a wood chopper. If anyone remembers the famous story, they charged money to enter the study hall. He couldn't afford the money. He ended up sleeping on the roof. Okay, so Hil now Shivna Avad Iska. Shivna was a successful businessman, and he did not support his brother Hil in studying Torah. L'Saif, eventually Hil became a great sage. So Shivna said, "Hold on a second. I'll give you half of my wealth, and you give me half of the reward for your Torah study." Hana Ara v'liflig. Let's go ahead and let me split our wealth, and you split your Torah study. Yotza Baska, the heavenly voice rang out and said, "V'amar," and it said, "In Yitanish is called Hain Beisay Ba'ava." The man gives a tremendous amount of his wealth, half of his wealth, in pursuit of love. Will they not despise him? And indeed, Shivna was not able to trade post facto his wealth for Hil's greatness. However, the first two examples of the Gemara, which is Shimon, the brother of Azariah, and Rav Yochanan, Shimon, the brother of Azariah, was supported by his brother, I believe. 1 second. Yeah, his brother supported him while he was studying Torah, and Rabbi Yochanan was supported by the Bnei Asiya, the exilarch. The exilarch supported him before he became a great scholar. So these people were making an investment into his future. They were supporting what they thought might eventually become a scholar, and he indeed became a scholar. Those people, they do get half the rewards. It's only when you come post facto and you want half that we say doesn't work.
What was bothering me here, the statement, a transgression does not extinguish the reward for Torah study. Does that mean you can go?
No, so it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that
It extinguishes the reward.
it means that the Torah study might still have some protective component even after one has sinned. Extinguishing means it's gone.
Right.
So when they say Averim Chaba Mitzvah means that even if a person has the merit of good deeds, if he didn't Aver, if he sins, it extinguishes it. No more. It no longer protects you. You think of the example of the guy in the forest. You extinguish his lamp, it's gone.
But at dawn, you can't extinguish that light.
Right. Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't offer perfect protection. The highwayman might still attack you at night, and not all animals are nocturnal. Some of them, even the nocturnal animals, sometimes attack it by day. But it means that there is some protective feature.
I mean,
It's obviously, we're not talking about the infallibility of the Pope. That's clearly not the case. It doesn't mean that you're infallible if you study Torah. What it means is that
study Torah and go around and do bad deeds,
it's not gonna, it won't make a difference. It will make a difference, but it doesn't mean that you won't have, it doesn't mean you won't suffer the consequence. You will suffer the consequence. The question is, to what extent can it be delayed? And Torah will still offer some protection from delaying the consequence. It won't eliminate the consequences. And it certainly doesn't mean that somebody studying Torah is infallible. Obviously, Doeg and Achitophel were both Torah scholars who both fell pretty badly. Okay. Doeg had a horrific death. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was terrible. Okay. Omer Ben Azai. Ben Azai says, okay, so Ben Azai says, because a schus, a merit, might protect from the Sotah waters, a person should teach his daughter Torah so that if she drinks the water of Sotah and she doesn't die, she won't think she's vindicated for the fact that, if she was actually adulterous. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, if you teach your daughter Torah, you're teaching her tiflis. Yeah, I'm not going to try to go through the apologetics here if there are any, but tiflis means promiscuity. Okay, and we'll explain why in a minute. No
PC explanation is needed.
If you want the more PC explanation, you can look at the article somewhere else, and maybe you'll get one. I don't know. Okay, the Gemara says tiflis sakadayadach, meaning as if that sort of that Torah is sort of the book of promiscuity. Obviously, Torah is not a promiscuous book, but it's as if you taught her promiscuity. Why is this? Rabbi Dovid explains, my time in Rabbi Eliezer, what's the reasoning of Rabbi Eliezer? The siv ani chachma shechanti arma. I, wisdom, have lied with arma. What does arma mean? Arma means a few things. Arma means naked, arm. It also means arma also means like cunning, like a fox. When wisdom enters a person, he becomes much more cunning. And therefore, the woman who's now familiar with the entire Sotah process, she'll make sure to become a Sotah without without checking the boxes, and therefore she won't actually be able to perform the Sotah procedure on her. Okay, the Gemara says Rabbanon hayanicha. Okay, and that's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Eliezer basically is saying is that if you teach people the technicalities to avoid being indicted, then they'll make sure to engage in those technicalities. And that's what Rabbi Eliezer says, that teaching your daughter Torah is like teaching her promiscuity. However, the rabbis disagree. How do they explain this verse? They explain it like Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, the Amar Yossi Bar Chanina, Ein Divrei Torah Miskaymin El V'Mishamayim Atzmei Orim Aleim. Orim in this case means naked. What does it mean a person makes himself naked for Torah? It means he doesn't engage in anything else but Torah. So the only thing he has with him is just Torah. He separates himself from everything else.
Right.
both from pursuits and from wealth. And then he merits long-term retention of his Torah study. I, wisdom, have rested with arma. Arma here means arum, naked, empty. Rabbi Yochanan says, Torah study is not retained except by those that make themselves as if they aren't. What does that mean? We'll explain in a moment. Chachma will be found by those people that are ayin. That means humility. A person is humble, then Torah study he will be able to have long-term retention for his Torah study. We'll continue just another few minutes. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua made the following statement: a woman would rather a small measurement and tiflus. Again, tiflus literally means promiscuity. We'll explain what it means in a moment. The Gemara will explain what it means in a moment. More than 10 measurements of bread and precious and abstinence. What does that mean? The Gemara says, "My kamer, what exactly do we mean? This is what it means. A woman would rather have less support from her husband, but be with her husband constantly, than being, a wealthy husband who supports her with a lot of wealth, but precious where she's separate." What this simply means is the way the Farshim explains. So, if a person lives at home, so a regular husband is obligated to be with his wife either at a minimum two times a week. However, let's say he is a ship captain, so then his obligation to be with his wife is once a year. What happens if he becomes a ship captain after he's married? That's a separate discussion. Okay, he obviously can't unless he gets a permission. It's obviously the case. Okay, but now a woman. So the Gemara is saying as follows: a woman would rather live a simple day laborer who will be at home every night than marrying a ship captain who will provide her with a lot of wealth, but will be home who's obligated to be home once a year, or something similar. If he drives the camels, it's once every 3 months. Something like that. Okay.
Right.
Okay. We'll stop there. I should catch up tomorrow. Okay. Good to see everybody.
Here, Yashua.
Have a great day.